The night smelled of bleach, rain, and humiliation. Under the blinding lights of Vale Tower, the city's tallest symbol of power and pride, a man in a faded uniform pushed his mop across the marble floor. His hands were rough, cracked from long hours of cleaning what others dirtied without thought. He was invisible to everyone, except when someone needed to sneer. And that night, someone did. As the elevator doors opened with a chime, the employees froze. Out stepped Clarissa Vale, the youngest and most celebrated CEO in the city. She was flawless in her designer heels and diamond smile, walking like the world itself bent under her confidence. But when she passed the janitor kneeling by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her eyes flicked down with irritation. The man had paused his mopping to move aside her shadow. A small puddle glistened under her step. Her lips curved into a cold smirk. "Watch where you mop, janitor," she said sharply, brushing past without another glance. Her assistants laughed behind her. The janitor's grip tightened on the mop handle, but he said nothing. He just kept his head down, his reflection trembling in the wet marble beneath her heels. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strength to rise no matter who doubts you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This story will remind you why we should never judge a person by the uniform they wear. That man's name was Ethan Cole, a single dad who used to have everything a man could dream of. A loving wife, a small home in the suburbs, and a little daughter named Lily, whose laughter filled every corner of his life. But fate had strange ways of teaching humility. 2 years ago, his wife, Emily, died in a car accident on her way to pick up Lily from school. Ethan had lost more than a partner that day. He'd lost the light in his world. Bills piled up. Grief turned to exhaustion. The company he had worked for, ironically, Vale Industries, downsized him out of nowhere. He had been a mid-level manager, nothing fancy, but he had always worked hard. When they let him go, no one remembered the years he'd given them. With no degree to lean on, no savings left, and a little girl to feed, Ethan took whatever job he could find. Cleaning floors at the very building that had once printed his paycheck was not dignity. It was survival. He told himself he'd only do it until he found something better. But weeks turned to months, and each morning he found himself in the same uniform, carrying the same mop. Clarissa Vale never knew his story. To her, janitors were background noise, people who existed only to make sure her reflection stayed spotless on the boardroom floor. She was brilliant, yes, a visionary who'd built her reputation on bold takeovers and ruthless efficiency. But her success came wrapped in arrogance. What she didn't know was that the same man she'd mocked was working nights and studying days, attending online business classes from his old laptop in a small apartment that smelled faintly of disinfectant and baby lotion. He'd tuck Lily into bed, whispering stories of hope, then open his books and lose himself in numbers and case studies. His dream wasn't revenge. It was redemption, to rebuild his life so his daughter could grow up proud of him again. Then, one night, fate knocked. Literally, an elderly man named Arthur Hemsley, whom Ethan often saw sitting quietly in the Vale Tower lobby, dropped his walking cane. Ethan rushed to help him, guiding him gently to a seat. They spoke for a while, just small talk about life, loss, and work. Ethan didn't brag, didn't complain. He just shared his dreams quietly, with humility. Arthur listened with the kind of attention that few gave anymore. When Ethan left, Arthur looked after him thoughtfully. What Ethan didn't know was that Arthur Hemsley was Vale Tower's largest private investor, the hidden force behind the company's wealth. Over the next few weeks, Arthur returned often and sought Ethan out, drawn to his sincerity and grounded wisdom. Eventually, he asked Ethan to come by his office for coffee, not in a janitor's closet, but in the investor's suite at the top floor. Ethan was nervous, confused, but grateful. Arthur listened again, this time more deeply. Ethan spoke of leadership, compassion, and how success should never erase empathy. He shared his ideas about running a company where people mattered more than titles. Arthur said little, but his eyes gleamed. 2 months later, Arthur passed away quietly in his sleep. When his will was read, everyone at Vale Tower was stunned. He had left behind his shares, 51% of Vale Industries, to a man no one had ever heard of, Ethan Cole. The news spread like wildfire. Clarissa Vale was furious. She stormed into the boardroom demanding explanations, convinced there had been a mistake. Her lawyers pored over the documents, but they were flawless. Arthur had left a personal letter too. To Ethan Cole, the man who reminded me what true leadership means. I trust you'll restore the heart this company has lost. 3 months after being mocked as just a janitor, Ethan walked back into the same building, but this time, he wore a tailored suit instead of a uniform. His posture was quiet but confident, his eyes soft but unshakable. The elevator doors opened again, just as they had that night. But this time, the employees stood taller. They recognized him, and shame flickered across their faces. When Clarissa saw him, she froze. Her laughter died on her lips. "You?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "This can't be real." Ethan didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at her with the same calm dignity he'd always had. "You told me to watch where I mop," he said softly. "Now I'll be watching where you lead." The boardroom fell silent. Ethan didn't fire anyone that day. He didn't seek revenge. Instead, he proposed a new vision, one built on fairness, compassion, and accountability. For the first time, even Clarissa couldn't speak. Something in his composure, in the grace of his humility, shook her more than any threat could. Over the following months, Ethan transformed Vale Industries from a cold corporate empire into a community-driven powerhouse. He implemented scholarship programs for single parents, mental health support for employees, and profit sharing for janitorial and maintenance staff. People worked harder, not out of fear, but gratitude. Clarissa, humbled and curious, stayed. Ethan didn't remove her, he guided her. Slowly, her sharp pride softened into respect. One evening, after a long strategy meeting, she approached him privately. She admitted she had never met a leader like him, one who had every right to hate her, yet chose kindness. Her eyes glistened. "Why?" she asked. "Why didn't you destroy me when you could have?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything. And because my daughter deserves to see that forgiveness builds stronger than revenge ever could." It was in that moment that Clarissa saw the man beyond the suit. The father who had once mopped floors just to feed his little girl. The soul that pain couldn't break. And something inside her shifted. Months later, the company celebrated its most successful year ever. But more than profits, it was the culture that shone. People spoke to each other with warmth, respect, and care. The janitors, once invisible, were greeted by name. One afternoon, as the sun bled gold through the glass walls, Lily ran through the halls laughing, holding a small cupcake from the cafeteria. Clarissa knelt to greet her, and Lily said proudly, "My dad owns this building now, but he still says the best thing he ever owned was my smile." Clarissa smiled too, this time, not with pride, but with gratitude. She understood now that success without humanity was just an empty tower of glass. And Ethan? He often stood by the same window where Clarissa had once mocked him, watching the city lights flicker below. The mop was gone, but the lessons remained. Every reflection on the marble floor reminded him, no one is ever just anything. Sometimes the humblest hearts carry the greatest power to change the world.